In March 2026, a high school senior named Owen Johansson logged into his college portal to find his roommate and saw a rejection where his acceptance used to be. With no call or warning, Brigham Young University had accidentally admitted 9 students, let them celebrate, and then quietly taken it back. But that's not even the wildest part of the story, because while BYU's mistake was an accident, what happened at UPenn was much worse. But to truly understand how we got here, we have to see where it all went wrong and why you might be next. The Johansson family had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Owen's parents had both attended BYU years before, so when the acceptance letter came through, it felt like the story had come full circle. They celebrated and quickly began the enrollment process. Owen had even begun searching for a roommate, but as he went through the portal, something was off. The welcome to BYU message had been replaced with a rejection notice, quietly swapped out like it had never existed. They hadn't received any call or formal warning. All he saw was a rejection where an acceptance used to be. When Owen's parents reached out to university officials soon after, they were told the acceptance notification was a mistake. Unfortunately, this wasn't a clerical issue they could appeal or a miscommunication they could clear up over the phone. According to officials, the acceptance was never real, and BYU wanted them to know that and move on. But Owen's mother, Talai Johansson, wasn't having it. She told reporters she was completely heartbroken by the entire process, and on top of this, she was frustrated by the way it was handled. BYU had apologized profusely to her and her husband, but hadn't reached out to Owen directly. The school that had just upended her son's plans could barely even look him in the eye. And 18-year-old Owen Johansson was in the middle of his senior year, trying to figure out the next chapter of his life. He'd done everything right. He applied, wrote his essays, and got into college. He started building his future around it, and in the span of a few days, all of that got ripped away by a faulty notification system. BYU Director of Admissions Chad Johnson subsequently issued a public apology, saying the university was truly sorry that an unfortunate error in our admissions decision notification system resulted in 9 prospective students mistakenly receiving congratulatory messages of acceptance. I was really mad, Johansson told the outlet, adding that his anger then turned into sadness. What makes this even harder to swallow is that BYU had done this before. In 2024, the university's College of Nursing mistakenly sent both acceptance and rejection letters to hundreds of prospective students, and blamed it on an error in a new system. This was merely 1 year prior to this incident, and here they were again. But Owen's mother, Talai, would do something so brilliant that it changed the course of history. As news of the mistake spread publicly, the reaction was swift and unforgiving. People weren't just upset about the error itself, they were upset about how coldly the aftermath was handled. A formal statement and a promise to fix the system wasn't enough for these 9 students. Talai Johansson wasn't going to let that stand. She bravely reached out to the university and made her position clear. BYU should honor the original admissions notice, not just for Owen, but for all 9 students. I want all of these 9 students to be admitted into BYU, she said. It is the right thing to do. And then she took it further, going public with the story and making sure it couldn't be quietly buried. And it worked. Following widespread backlash, BYU made a historic decision to reverse their statements entirely and granted provisional admission to all 9 students. Officials said they were working with each of them individually to ensure they had a real opportunity to attend and meet the university's academic standards. Owen's father, Aaron Johansson, said a university administrator reached out to his son directly to deliver the news and to apologize personally. Something the family had specifically pointed out was missing from BYU's early response. Owen's family was told that he would need to earn at least a 3.0 GPA as part of the provisional terms. But the point is, he's in. Each and every student got in. And without Mrs. Johansson's refusal to accept a corporate apology and move on, Owen would likely be searching for another school entirely. But his mother put up a nationwide fight that BYU couldn't ignore. But what happened at UPenn was something completely different. It wasn't a glitch or an accident. It was a calculated decision made by one of the most prestigious universities in the world, and it was driven by something so far outside the admissions process that most students would never even blink an eye. So if you're applying to a research university right now, this next event could reach you in a couple of months. If you've existed in the past 250 years, you probably know about the college that possesses the world's strongest business school, the University of Pennsylvania. UPenn runs one of the most respected doctoral research programs in the country, since every year, departments across Penn schools go through a rigorous process to select incoming graduate students. Professors review hundreds of applications, conduct interviews, and spend months identifying the students they want. And in early 2025, those departments went through the process and selected their desired students for graduate programs across the university. As you can imagine, most of those students were told they were in, and they reasonably started making plans, turning down other offers, arranging housing, and preparing to move. But very soon after, Penn got some very bad news. On February 21st later that year, Penn notified various graduate department chairs that it would significantly reduce admissions across the university's graduate programs, a decision faculty alleged was made after programs had already accepted students. You read that right. This was after students had already been accepted. One professor, who asked to remain anonymous due to fear of retribution, told the Daily Pennsylvanian that the decision appeared to be last minute and came after departments had already submitted their selections to the university. We go through hundreds of applications, we interviewed dozens of finalists, and basically all of that work was just for naught. We just wasted half of those people's time because our list just got cut by more than half. The professor described it as the university pulling the rug out from faculty, some of whom had already verbally offered acceptances to students, only to be told those students might now be cut. But here's the detail that might turn your stomach. One department alone, which had submitted its choices on February 14th, was forced to rescind the acceptances of 10 out of the 17 students it had selected. 10 people who had been chosen, who may have already told their families, turned down other offers, and started mentally preparing for a new chapter of their life. All gone just like that. And this wasn't limited to one department. Faculty members said that all departments within the School of Arts and Sciences had been notified to reduce the size of their graduate programs, and an emergency meeting was called on Friday evening to address the cuts and decide on collective action. On the whole, people were very upset, one professor wrote, complaining about lack of transparency and consultation and about decisions being imposed by the administration without proper explanation. 22 graduate chairs in Penn School of Arts and Sciences formally objected, warning that drastically reducing graduate students would harm undergraduate programs, since doctoral students typically taught undergraduate classes, and that there already weren't enough of them to cover courses. They also warned of reputational harm to Penn itself. Some of those chairs had already made informal offers to incoming students. According to one graduate chair, 18 informally made offers had to be rescinded. Penn's Perelman School of Medicine ordered a 35% reduction in doctoral students, admitting 201 students for fall 2025, down from an average of 307 in recent years. Across the entire university, Penn brought in 527 new doctoral students that fall, down from 656 the year before. That's a 20% drop across the board in a single year. Faculty even showed up to a Board of Trustees budget meeting holding signs that read, "Fund our graduate programs," with another one saying, "Trustees want a $13 million parking garage. We want a university." And the reason it happened wasn't even internal. It wasn't about academic quality or program capacity, or anything those students could have done differently. It came from a force so far outside the walls of Penn that most students would never even see it coming. And here's where things spiral out of the Penn community. On February 7th, the National Institutes of Health proposed a directive that could cost Penn $240 million, a 15% cap on the indirect costs that the government reimburses to universities for research overhead. And for you guys watching this, it doesn't stop here. You'll soon realize why you might be next in line. Indirect costs aren't some abstract line item buried in a spreadsheet. They are what keep university research alive. The lab spaces where discoveries are made, the equipment that runs the experiments, the staff that keeps programs operational, and the graduate students doing the actual work. When the government caps what it reimburses for those costs, universities bleed. Penn's senior research leadership estimated that a 15% cap would result in a loss of over $170 million for the remainder of the 2025 calendar year alone, threatening 529 jobs directly tied to indirect costs, and impacting an additional 4,020 Penn employees. That means nearly 5,000 people's livelihoods were tied to a policy decision made in Washington. Penn and 12 other universities filed a lawsuit against the NIH, and a judge temporarily halted the cuts. But here's what the university said out loud, even with the restraining order in place. It remains clear that we are operating in a highly unstable fiscal environment and should expect to see a decline in federal support this year. Penn was aware that they were working in a turbulent atmosphere and prepared for the worst regardless of how the court ruled. So even though the legal win was real, the fear wasn't going anywhere. But it wasn't just the NIH. On March 19th, the Trump administration froze over $175 million in federal funding from the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Defense, citing Penn's failure to bar trans athletes from women's sports. Penn had 21 active contracts and 596 active grants receiving funding through those two agencies. Then, on March 25th, faculty across 7 of Penn's schools received stop work orders, notices that their federally contracted research had been halted. The total value of those halted projects was approximately $175 million. So for all of you watching this, you're in for a wild ride because admissions is turning into a lottery system. And in 2 different corners of the country, 9 unlucky students went from celebrating the best news of their lives to staring at a rejection screen, like the melancholy class of Ivy League doctoral students who had their futures quietly restructured by a decision made in Washington across the country. Sadly, none of them did anything wrong. The process is just a brutal current that takes warriors to fight, and sometimes to no avail. And exactly 1 year ago, I experienced a similar event with Cornell University, but things went downhill much faster than the last. And if you're up for the challenge, you have 5 seconds to see for yourself.